Welcome to the Gottesdienst crowd, where we foster confessional integrity, liturgical preservation, and preaching that doesn't stink. We believe that the historic liturgy of the divine service is more than mere cobwebs of antiquity, but it is a true treasure of the Church, to be dusted off and brought down from her attic to be enjoyed. So let's get dusting.
Welcome back to the Gottesdienst crowd. This is Jason Broughton. Today we have back with us David Ramirez. Welcome back, Ramirez.
Good to be on.
It's good to have you. So today we're going to look at, it's kind of a different episode. We're looking at just a number of different resources that are helpful for parish pastors, but even for house fathers in the home on handing on the faith, but also handing on the history of our church and the history of who Luther was and kind of what he accomplished, and even some devotional resources as you visit grandmas and grandpas who may be homebound or things like that. So it's kind of a resources episode, a books briefly noted episode, and I'm looking forward to diving into this. Do you have any kind of opening thoughts about this?
Yeah, I would just echo what you said. That the way I'm describing these books is mostly how a pastor would use it in the parish. But I can say that every single one of these books should be on a layman's shelf as well. Maybe not should, but if not should, could be and would be of benefit. So you can definitely tailor the usage to your own home.
Mm-hmm. So where do you want to begin?
Well, let's start with biblical resources.
Okay.
So I've got a couple different resources that I think really aid biblical, learning about the Bible, and I think we've done stuff on teaching Bible history before. I'm pretty sure we have. So I don't want to go too deep in that, but just a couple ones that we hand out like candy here at St. Paul's, and I would recommend to every pastor to utilize, and for that matter, every house father. The first one on the list is 100 Bible Stories. Oh, also, I forgot the criteria for picking these books were not only are they good, but they are easy to use and they are readily available. Those were the other criteria. So they're not like hard to find. Well, there's one that I'm cheating on, but we'll get to that if we get to it. But 100 Bible Stories is super easy. I could talk about Bible stories and Bible histories in our synod for hours and hours and hours. I know that's not what people want me to do, though. So just in brief, I'll say 100 Bible Stories goes back a long, long time, many generations. In the Missouri Synod, our tradition of Bible histories, taking the main, typically narrative sections of Scripture and either reproducing them in whole, part, or in summary, goes all the way back to Luther, actually. And in the Synod, we had a Bible history written by Hübner that we brought over from Germany. But then we started producing our own for different purposes and for different levels, in the sense of age levels or ranges. And 100 Bible Stories, I think, is the best one we have for little kids. And what I mean by little kids is they can't even read yet. And by the way, this is 100 Bible Stories, and it's available from CPH. So you can get a nice hardback version from CPH. And I think it's only like $12-15. And what's nice about it is not only does it cover the narrative sections of Scripture, and what I mean by that, for anyone who is a little confused by that, it is skipping the books of prophecy for the most part, Proverbs, Psalms, Paul's letters. So it's really just following the historical books, which is helpful because children, as all of us do, it's most easy for us to grasp history. read me a story, daddy or mommy. We all understand this. And so it's getting the basic history along with the basic message of the scriptures, but really following the narrative or historical sections. In terms of formatting, it's obviously 100 Bible stories, 50 from the old, 50 from the new. And each one is roughly the same length, which can be nice, especially with little kids who are wiggly and squirmy. And there is text on one page. So you open it up, and on the left-hand side, there's the text. And on the right-hand side, there's a picture. There's some helpful explanatory notes at the bottom of the text. Not tons, not overwhelming, certainly not exhaustive. But those are there, especially to help out parents. And then beneath the picture, there's some questions for reflection. Now, this is a minor gripe. I think some of those questions for reflection are really for more middle school kids, not so much for babies. They need questions more like, okay, who married Rebecca? What was, Joseph's brothers' names? They need more factual questions. But you know what? It's a great resource. Use it as you see fit. We always pass it out to every Sunday school kid, and we try to make sure that they have one at home. But there's also enough of them to use in Sunday school if that's what's going to happen with that particular teacher. Older kids obviously are reading out of the Bible, but I don't know if there's anything else you want me to say for it, but if I guess I would.
Is that primarily how you use it for Sunday school and then giving it to the parents for home?
Yeah.
Or do you have another application for it?
No, not really. No, I mean those would be the two ones. Like I've talked to people and said, because they'll be like, oh, we just had a baby. We want to get ahead of the game. We want a Bible storybook or something like that. Get this one. You don't need a baby cartoon one. Those are stupid. And you don't need a radical amended text. Again, I'm not utterly opposed to having summaries where they kind of chop out the side stories and they simplify things, as long as it's a faithful summary.
Correct.
But you don't need to go below what this is. You literally don't need another one. Now, there might be other ones that are good. I'm not saying this is exclusionary to others, but honestly, I think as a pastor, as a father, this, if I could snap my fingers and every single family in the Missouri Synod had one of these in their household, this is the one I would pick. In terms of readily available. I'm not saying it's the best of all time, and I don't have minor gripes, but one out of ones that are mass available, affordable, and usable, this one's great. Pictures are good. I'm always a critic on the art, but I mean, for the most part, it's really good, realistic, not hyper realistic, but it's really good. And so
it's not cartoonish.
No, not cartoonish. I mean, the people look like drawings of real people. It's good. Oh, I forgot. They've got a little thing, words to remember, and they'll give you like a Bible quote at the bottom.
Oh,
not
nice.
necessarily from the passage or from the text, but many times a psalm, or in the Old Testament, something from the New Testament. And that's also how they weave in some of Paul's letters, like very quotable quotes in the New Testament. So it's well done. It's straightforward. It's good. I know that you can actually get a workbook with it, but I will plead ignorance on the value of that workbook because we don't use it that way. But there is a workbook from CPH that goes with it. But I don't have. I think I looked at it once years ago, but I don't really. That's not how I use it. To me, if you're a new parent or your kids are starting to get older and either they can read or they can't read, use this one either way, and then they can grow into it. You read it to them for the first 5, 6, 7 years of their life, and then they can start reading it. And it's the same one. It's the same pictures. It's the same format, getting drilled into their mind and heart. So, yeah. Should I move on to the next one?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. Going up a level of complexity and comprehensiveness would be another resource from CPH. They should give me like money or free shipping for all this promo. But I doubt that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So Concordia's Bible History. I'm going to zippa-de-lippa, as they say, and not go on and on about our synod's history of Bible histories, which is to me fascinating. But regardless, Concordia's Bible History, again, I've got some minor gripes, but it is a faithful updating of the Bible histories that came beforehand. There was this one, Concordia's Bible History, is compatible with the LSB and the ESV Catechism.
Okay.
The last one was more NIV and LW coded. And then the one that a lot of people remember is Advanced Bible History, red cover. And that was the one that was used for generations. That was published in 1936, and it was not supplanted until like, I think the 90s or 80s. I can't even remember. But you'll still find those, sometimes 30 of them on shelves in churches. And there's a reason why they last so long is because going all the way back to Hubner with his Bible history that was written in like 17 something, 41 or 14 or something. We've been using these Bible histories in schools and at home as well. So in the parish and home. And Concordia's Bible History is, for the most part, following the same scope and sequence. And just like the 100 Bible Stories, it follows the historical narratives of the Bible. Obviously, there's more stories. So in the Old Testament, you have 72. And in the New Testament, I believe you have, it's 71. It's got a little bit more in it, though. And we use this for confirmation instruction. We do a 3-year cycle. We do Old Testament, New Testament, and then Catechism proper. They're memorizing the Catechism every year, and that's just a very small, overarching thing of our program. There's a lot more to it, but that's not what we're talking about. But in terms of the book, it divides it up into sections of history, which is nice. So, for instance, the Old Testament history, you have primeval history, which is kind of a weird way to put it, but undivided humanity is the way they used to call it. The patriarchs, Moses and Joshua, time of the judges, first 3 kings, so Saul, David, Solomon, division of the kingdom to captivity in Babylon, and then Babylonian captivity, all the way down to the birth of Christ. And so it's nice. They set it up so that you can use it. Whether now I personally wouldn't give this to the older Sunday school kids because they should be in the Bible. But we do use it for confirmation because it is you can march along, and you have numbers on the stories. So for homework and workbook and all that kind of stuff, it's all coded very well for a curriculum. So we do use it in confirmation, but the older Sunday school kids use the actual Bible, which is of course the goal. But there's also other neat little things in here, like there's little reviews of each period. Now, if you use this without a workbook, at the end, it's kind of nice. I should say there's notes. There's usually about like 3, 4, 5, 6 footnotes for each Bible history. So that's helpful. There are items for study that connect up the story with a section of the catechism. They don't tell you how to connect it. They expect you to do it. So, for instance, after the first story, creation, items for study, first article. That's all they put, first article, obviously of the creed. But it just kind of shows you what general connection. So, I mean, again, a kid reading this on their own would probably just read the story, but it's very easy for a parent who has gone through catechism, and certainly a pastor, just little reminders of what to connect up with, some other verses, and also hymn verses to connect up with the story. I'll be honest, I don't always make all of those connections because we're trying to get through the story, and the kids have questions, and we don't always get to that. There's also review questions, which I will admit that I don't use because I use a workbook coded to it. Just as a brief aside, I used to use the Concordia's Bible History workbook that was connected to this resource that CPH publishes. However, and this is why they're not going to give me free shipping for all this promo. I think the workbook is not helpful, and I don't mean to beat up on whoever wrote it. I don't even know who compiled it, but it's not properly done. I don't want to say it's not well done, because it's well done for what it is. The questions are good and appropriate, but not for older grade school kids who it's aimed at. Maybe high school kids, but it's a lot. It's not enough. What you classical educators call grammar level. You know what I mean? It's too much application, too much theory, too many connections between the Old and New Testament that are a little esoteric for kids who may or may not know these stories already. I'm all about connecting the Old and New Testament, but and also they have, now I can't help but get on the Gripe Fest, or the Gripe train, but they also, the last question is always like a project, like make a craft. And it's like, we're not doing crafts in confirmation. So I don't like their workbook. It's not bad. It's not evil. I just don't think it fits the age group and the level of what you're trying to do, or at least what I'm trying to do. Maybe others would like it, but I'm not the only one who's had this complaint. Lots of people. And long ago, I was going to write worksheets for it, but a mutual friend of ours did the work for me, so I didn't have to do it. So Christian Preuss, pastor in Wyoming, he wrote a workbook that is published by Steadfast Press, and it's super cheap, way cheaper than the Concordia one, and it is exactly what you're looking for. Fill in the blank, very, who said what, where, and all that kind of stuff. So that workbook is way better, and once that came out, I switched over. So he just published that a couple years ago. But there's other things in this book that are really, really good, and I really got to commend CPH, even though I just kind of drug them a little bit. They've got not only summaries of each period, but they also have, and reviews, but they also have an appendix to Old Testament history, which is basically getting you from the close of the Old Testament through all the way to the New Testament. So those 4 centuries. So the stuff, the later, Greek period where the Holy Land is dominated by the Ptolemies and the Seleucids and, the Maccabees and stuff like that. So there is, it's a couple pages long. It's really nice. So that's in there. And they've got some time charts in here, and in the back, they've got, a pronunciation key and a Bible history atlas. So it's not a super big atlas, but it is really nice. It's got like 10 maps, I want to say, 12 maps. It's fantastic. So I use this for confirmation, but I have, encouraged parents to get it. And one thing that I kind of want to shift the discussion on about this book, the other place that I use it is for folks who are wanting to join the church, who do not have a deep Christian background. I'm not just saying that they're not Lutheran, but I mean they do not know the basics of biblical history. I'm not like making fun of them. I'm not demeaning them. That's just the truth, Many of them are very intelligent, sharp folks. They just did not grow up in any type of Christian church, or they didn't really soak up a lot, or their family wasn't very serious about learning it. And I have given these out to people or encouraged them to buy it because the Bible can be a little daunting if you don't have the overall picture. And because this follows the history chronologically, and has some brief, not overwhelming explanatory notes, it can be very, very helpful. Honestly, there's been folks in my congregation who have been born and raised Missouri Synod, either here or elsewhere, who've bought them as well. Not because they didn't know the stories, but they wanted to see it in one big picture without wondering, in what period is Isaiah prophesying, right? Or something like that. So that's another way you can use it. It is not just for kids. Whenever I hand it to an adult or show an adult this, I say, listen, this is not an insult. It's a really neat tool. And they've really appreciated it, actually. And those who have read it, which there's been several, have really, really learned a lot. And it was kind of neat. And it helped them get back into the Bible in a more purposeful, clear way.
So could this resource be used by parents for devotions?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if most of your kids are little kids, you could use the 100 Bible stories.
100 Bibles?
Yeah. But if your kids are a little bit old, well, see, okay, I'll be honest, I wouldn't. But I don't want to say you couldn't. Because I guess it depends on the family. I would hope that a house father or house mother, whoever's doing the devotions, who is serious enough to do the devotions every night, and who is, committed to it, knows the Bible enough that they can walk through the Bible without a guide like this. But you know what? Maybe that's intimidating. Maybe having a one-stop shop and having the little helps and the maps, maybe so. So I don't know. I personally wouldn't use it for devotions. I would rather read straight from the Bible. But again, I'm a pastor. I've been studying this a lot more, and if it makes it easier for a layman to lead his family with this book, great, awesome. I don't think any of us would complain about that. So, yeah.
Okay.
Even if you wanted to read straight from the Bible, you could have this on your shelf, and 2 minutes before you started devotions, or the day before if you're preparing, you can go and say, okay, we're gonna do we're in the New Testament, and we're gonna do Stilling the Storm, and they give you all the references from all of the Gospels that have that, and you just pick the one that you are going to work off of,
Okay.
So it coordinates up. It is designed to lead you back into the Bible and not away from it.
Yeah. And so the workbook that you're talking about from Steadfast Press was designed by Christian Preuss.
Yeah.
What distinguishes this volume from, say, the one that
CPH puts out?
Correct.
Yeah. I mean, he just has better questions.
Okay.
The questions are simpler, more straightforward. I hear I'll flip it open. Oh yeah, it's called Bible History Worksheets. So pretty straight and to the point. So I flipped open to David and Goliath. Why does David end up in the Israelite camp? What has Saul promised anyone who kills Goliath? Factoid questions, which that's what I was looking for. Not, explain the relationship between, David's, victory over Goliath and how Christ defeated Satan. I mean, that's a good question, but it is a little advanced. And that's the kind of question, because then you're looking up different places, and do the kids know where to look it up? And Pastor Preuss's worksheet book is just a lot more straightforward. The one complaint I have is that it's not one worksheet per story. It's usually one worksheet per 2 or even 3 stories. And I'm fine with 2, but once it gets to 3, it's a little short shrift on questions. So,
gotcha.
So I'm always a critic when it comes to Bible history stuff. So that's my one critique of it. And it's a very minor one.
And so your last one within the Bible.
Yeah, in terms of biblical resources, I would be remiss if I didn't mention Kretzmann's commentary. Paul E. Kretzmann was a Missouri Synod pastor and then longtime professor at Concordia, St. Louis. And he wrote a popular commentary, so not a commentary that only sits on pastor shelves, but a layman's commentary, even though lots of pastors used it and still use it to this day. So that's why they call it a popular commentary. He wrote this back over 100 years ago. Nobody had huge celebrations, but they should have, because he wrote it. He basically put out one volume a year from 1921 to 1924. So 100 years ago. And they are just fantastic. And I don't want to go on and on about how great they are, because I always talk about these, and just use it, and you'll see why it's so great. It's simple, to the point. It answers the questions that the average person reading the scriptures would have about any particular passage. Mm-hmm. It is not a huge, it's a 4-volume set, but that makes it only about 5-6 times as long as the Bible. If you were to compare the word count, that's a rough estimate. Maybe it's more like 7 times. I don't know, but it's all online, so it is the most available out of everything. Well, I guess one other one is available online, but it's free online. I like the hardbacks if you can buy them off of Amazon, because then you or the kids can read them at home. We've got a set in our church library. Pretty much every Missouri Synod church has a set in their church library, I'm pretty sure. And if you don't, you should get one. But it is available online. And I don't want to go on and on, like I said, about how great it is. I want to point to an underutilized aspect of it. So the commentary is great, and the commentary is interspersed in between the verses.
Text.
Yeah, the text, the biblical text itself. But what you also have, and this is another application for the parish, is that you have introductions and special articles interspersed in these commentaries. And all of those introductions and special articles, or excurses, are also available online. And that's at kretzmannproject.org, I believe. Pastor Martin Deers, who I think you know is, I know him. You've met him before, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I met him in Bugenhagen.
Yeah. He comes to Bugenhagen normally. He put this all online. I don't know. It was online when I started the ministry, so it's been at least 15 years. I don't remember how long it's been up, but it's just fantastic. But in terms of not just the commentary being very helpful, every time I lead a new Bible study on a book of a Bible, I will print out Kretzmann's introduction to the book. So if we are studying, Romans, Paul's letter to the Romans, and I tell people, hey, we'll be starting Romans next week. They know that we won't actually be starting in on Romans 1:1, but next week we'll go over Kretzmann's introduction to Romans. And he just does a great job of doing that. Now, don't get me wrong. I think it's good for pastors to read the book beforehand, do their own study, get geared up and ready to go. And I always, as any good pastor would do, also add to whatever Kretzmann's saying, like, oh, by the way, there's also this theme in Romans where he hits these points, because Kretzmann is not trying to give an exhaustive introduction, but he gives a basic one. And if it ain't broke, don't fix it, and don't remake the wheel when there's a perfectly good one right there. So every once in a while, I think Kretzmann is a little off. It just came up the other day. He had a weird dating of one of John's epistles, and I was like, "This is the one out of 1,000 times I'm going to disagree with Kretzmann." But other than that, he's just solid gold, and I love using those introductions because yes, I could probably write an introduction, but that takes a lot of time. You've got to craft it, And I would much rather have something already printed out that I can trust, that I know is going to be good, and hand it out, and then I can amend or add to while I'm going through it, or maybe hand them another sheet of just a few notes that I've got. I don't even normally do that. I usually just do it orally. But I think that's a great way to use Kretzmann, not just reading his commentary for sermon prep or for Bible study, but to use his introductions as, your introduction to a book of the Bible. The other thing is his special articles and excursies. He only does that for the New Testament. So that's just a little tidbit warning right off the bat. I've been reading him for so long and rather carefully that sometimes I'm guessing what he's doing. So this is a guess. It's not, I don't think it's provable, but I am guessing that he only did it for the New Testament because A, we're in the New Testament era, and B, if you were to try to dive into every hard, difficult, or sticky topic in the Old Testament, he would have excursies like every other verse. So he doesn't do that. But in the New Testament, he's got special articles about sometimes topics that are hard to understand or are super, super important or that are under controversy at his time, but generally under ours too. And there's like 40 of them, all through the 2 volumes of the New Testament, and you can just copy and paste them online. So when would you use this? Well, when we were going through 1st and 2nd Corinthians, there's a couple special articles or excursies that he has. So when we got to those verses, I pulled those out and we covered them. And that was kind of neat to have that. But the biggest place I've used them is actually for my evangelism committee. And the reason being is because I don't think all of them are appropriate for that. Some of them are much more appropriate for Bible study and probably would not come up in an evangelistic situation. But a lot of them do cover common questions, themes, issues that people would have if you are talking to about the faith, and can turn into a tract as well, especially if you're printing them off for your church members. So that's that. We've done lots of different series in our evangelism committee, but this is one that we're in the middle of right now, and it's really been nice. So I'll print off a couple of these excursies and hand them out, and we will talk about them. Not so much in the sense that people don't know what it is. Like, the first one in the New Testament is the virgin birth. Everyone knows what the virgin birth is and why it's important. But how would we talk about this? Or if you needed a good summary, here, neighbor, you had a question about the virgin birth. They might not have a question about that, but whatever it may be. So I just want to read a couple off. The virgin birth, the obligation of a rightful betrothal, the baptism of John, the Jewish synagogue, significance of the Sermon on the Mount, the Son of Man, Roman government and tax collection in Palestine, miracles, the observance of Sunday, Christ's sphere of activity in his prophetic office, the primacy of Peter, the call of the gospel, Pharisees and Sadducees, the baptism of children, sin against the Holy Ghost, demoniac possession, the mode of baptism, and it goes on and on and on. So, one of the great ones for evangelism class or committee was baptism of children and the mode of baptism. We covered those together because, unfortunately, there's a lot of people who are not getting their kids baptized. Or if you're dealing with like Baptists or something, we don't baptize our kids. Well, how do you talk to somebody like that? Well, here's a little helpful resource that can remind you of the main points you need to talk about and maybe even hand to them. So one word of warning, Kretzmann does sometimes use older language. I updated his language before I handed them out. So that's something folks might want to do. But I view these as kind of a proto version of the What About series that Al Berry, our former Synod president, put out. Like, what about baptism? What about the Lord's Supper? What about, and now his topics were more general. But those are great little pamphlets that I'm sure tons of people still use today. What's the difference between us and the ELCA? What about this? What about that? And Kretzmann isn't doing that with all of these. Some of these are much more narrow, like Bible study questions. But many of them would be very good in an evangelistic setting. And so I would encourage people to think about, if you got an evangelism committee, yes, I know you might be planning events or programs or whatever, but do a study. I always find that study in the evangelism committee is the best thing, because you know it, I know it, everybody knows it. Most people come to church not because the pastor talks to them, but because friends, neighbors, family invite them to come. And so if we can equip lay people to know how to talk about doctrine and about the faith, and not just know what they believe in their hearts and in their heads and in their minds, but be able to express it and give them tools to also hand to people or talk through people with, that's going to go a long way.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, in Revelation, he's got one on chiasm and one on justification for Romans, and
there's
just very helpful things.
Yeah, there's so much great stuff. So I mean, it's like little essays by Kretzmann, all littered through this, and like nobody ever talks about them. It's kind of criminal.
You should note, if you're using the online version, it will. A selection box will come up when there's an article associated with that book.
Yes.
And you've got to not select chapter, but look at select article.
Yeah, thanks for reminding me about that. Yeah, it is a little hard to find, but yeah, there's that
when you've got the books, they're all interspersed there, right?
Yeah. When you have the books, they give you all of that in the table of contents. But yeah, online, there's that little box on the left-hand side that Deer's set up, where you can pick chapter. An introduction is at the very beginning, but the articles are under a separate little toggle box or whatever you call it. And it only shows up
when it's associated with that particular book.
Exactly, right. So if there's not one there, that means there's none for that book, which would be the whole Old Testament and maybe a couple New Testament books too. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I use Kretzmann quite a lot in preparation for Bible class, or looking at these particular select articles. As when people have questions about a particular thing, I will see if Kretzmann has an article on it.
Yeah. Long before I was using it in evangelism study, I would use it for like one-off Bible studies during the summer sometimes.
Oh, that's perfect.
Yeah, I don't know. Do you like what we do during the summer? What we've been doing for like the last 3, 4, 5 years is instead of trying to plow through a book of the Bible on Sunday morning, because people are coming and going with vacation, we'll just do like 1 or 2 week things. So it's not like people are gone a couple weeks and are lost.
Yeah.
So
I've done that too. I'm not doing that this year, but I have done that.
Yeah. Kretzmann's a great resource, and that's another way to use it.
So what other books do you have briefly noted?
That kind of covers the biblical ones, or the ones Bible helps. Another book, which is also totally available online, at least in the older translation, is Luther's Large Catechism. We were really blessed to receive a very generous donation in not just my church, but my whole dual circuit. We were given funds to purchase large catechisms for everybody who wanted to take part of a large catechism study circuit-wide. So like, I think our church received 65, 75, and times that by a lot more. I think all the churches in our circuits participated except like 2. So I think it was 12 out of 14, which is pretty awesome. And so, I mean, we got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of of large catechisms, and not to bring up the Lakaka business, but no, I am not talking about Luther's large catechism with annotations and essays or whatever that book was. I'm talking about actually Luther's small catechism. The other one is, as we've gone on and on about in past years, not that great. Actually, it's bad. At least the bad parts ruin the whole thing. There's lots of good stuff in it too. But I'm talking about actually Luther's small catechism, which if you buy, large catechism. Thank you. Which if you buy from CPH, that's all it is. Just get, the one that is red. It's got Luther's seal on the front, and it's just Luther's large catechism and study questions. Mm-hmm. And Luther's large catechism, I mean, we could talk about it if you really want to, but it's great. It's part of our Book of Concord. But the study questions are really neat. That's a feature in here. And from my understanding, Paul McCain, who passed away a couple of years ago, he wrote these. I just looked it up again. Yeah, study questions prepared by Paul T. McCain. And these are well done questions. So, for instance, I just randomly flipped to one on, what section are we in? Article 1 of the Creed. What sort of God do we have? What does he do for us? Paragraphs 12 through 16. So if you know the large catechism, paragraph doesn't quite mean paragraph like what we think of as a paragraph all the time. Sometimes it's just a couple sentences. But this really is a great way for someone to either write these out or to just at least think about them and go back and find the answer instead of paging through pages and pages and pages. So it's very user-friendly. And we walked through this over the last school year. We started like at the end of September or the beginning of October, and we just finished up about, 3 weeks ago, something like that. So we dipped a little bit into summer this year, but not far. And using the large catechism, I know I don't need to make that case to Lutheran pastors, or if I do, then maybe you're not a Lutheran pastor. But the large catechism was great for a Sunday morning Bible study. Luther wrote it just as he did for the small catechism, primarily for lay people. And I think it's gotten short shrift in the use in the parish. I disagree with the guys who want to use the large catechism for confirmation, but that's a whole nother ball of wax. But I do think the large catechism is well worth going through. And I look forward to all of these many, many hundreds of books in our little corner of southeastern Wisconsin being on literally hundreds of people's shelves, and hopefully not collecting dust, but people returning to them. And having walked through it, it's easier to do. So I encourage people to, plus it's cheap. It's a paperback. It's just Luther's Large Catechism. There's study questions. There's a nice little timeline at the beginning. And no annoying essays or annotations, just the catechism with little introductory parts, but no big preface or anything, and beautiful woodcuts, by the way. We kind of had a little game at the beginning of each section. I'd be like, okay, what's the woodcut about? And people had to figure it out because typically it was a scene from the Bible. And what's going on here? Try to figure it out. So you can also turn it into art appreciation class as well. I can't say enough about how wonderful that study was. Our numbers went up for Sunday morning Bible study because of it, and people really appreciated it. So, it was. So I would encourage people to thinking about doing it in their parish, and of course, for the house fathers out there, the large catechism should be on your shelf. I mean, come on. Small catechism, large catechism should be right next to it, ready to go.
Now, what about devotional works?
Yeah, I mean, we could talk forever on that. And obviously, I'm not trying to be exhaustive or anything like that, because there's so many good devotionals out there, so many different resources. So I am not recommending this above other ones. I'm just saying, I know everybody, especially pastors, have go-to devotionals that they suggest to their parishioners or that they use themselves. So I'm not trying to discount that or supersede it. I'm just trying to say, here's another tool that should be in your toolkit. And there was a Missouri Synod pastor back, actually, I don't even know what his span of ministry was, but he was born in 1884. And in the 30s, he wrote, I've found 4 devotional books, and they hit it big back in the old days. They were printed as little hardbacks. They were printed as paperbacks. And then they were so popular that they got turned into large print editions, like sight-saving editions with humongous print, and, full page, like 8.5 by 11 paperbacks with huge font. It's really hard to find those. I really love those, and sometimes I will print those off because they are so big and they are really easy on the eyes. And that's important because this devotional is not meant for specifically a whole family devotion. You could use it for that. I certainly wouldn't stop anybody, and I've done it before. But I should note that these devotionals were primarily meant for the sick, shut in, those stuck in the hospital, or otherwise unable to come to church for, maybe not a long period of time, but a significant period of time. And so the topics and the devotions are pointed towards that. But you could use them for lots of different purposes. But they were written primarily for shut-ins. I'll just read from his introduction. To my shut-ins, meditations and prayers for sick, convalescents, invalids, and afflicted, seeking comfort, strength, encouragement, hope, and peace in the glorious gospel of Jesus Christ, our Savior and friend. Like I said, that he wrote 4 of them, and I said they're really hard to find now. Well, they are hard to find if you want the large print edition. However, CPH, very thankfully, they should give me more money for this, did print with their print on demand department, 2 of them. So you can get 2 of them through print on demand on CPH. And Doerfler, if you go on the website, Doerfler is spelled Doerffler. So Alfred Doerfler, and he wrote 4 of them, but only 2 are available from CPH. And those 2 are called The Burden Made Light and The Yoke Made Easy, obviously taking those titles from Words of Our Lord. And they're great. There's about 30 to 40 of them, devotions in each volume. And each one starts out with a Bible verse, or, usually just one verse, but sometimes 2 or 3. So there's a title, there's a verse, and then there is a brief devotion. Now, what I will give to CPH is more praise, because these ones are not 8.5 by 11. They are smaller. They're the, I don't know, what is that, like 6 by 9 or something like that. Mm-hmm. So they are smaller, and they are paperback, but the print is big. The print is actually almost as big as the large print edition. That was the full size. I don't think it's quite as big, but I didn't take a measuring stick out and test it. Yeah. But it's super big. I've never found anyone, even with people who are pretty hard of seeing, they've never complained. So, the devotions are about usually about 2.5, 3 pages, but it's big print. So it's not as long as you might think. And it's just like a little mini sermon based on whatever text is chosen. A lot of Psalms, Isaiah, a lot, and a lot of other texts from the Gospels and the epistles. So there's a Bible verse, there's a devotion, and then there is a prayer at the end. And you can tell that this is written for shut-ins, especially people who are alone, because the prayers are all in the first person, I, instead of the more typical for family devotions, we. But if you are quick, you can just substitute the we for the I's, or the us for, the us for the me, and stuff like that. One little word of warning: every once in a while, not as much as Kretzmann, but every once in a while he uses some archaic language in his devotional, but not too much. And then the prayers, those are in kind of King James English. So the prayers are all the these and the thous. Now, in our day and age, I don't know about you, but most of the folks that I know who are long-term sick or shut in or hospitalized typically are older members, and they grew up with the King James, so it's not a big deal. But if you are going to give it to a family or someone who is middle-aged or young, you're going to want to warn them about that. And the mileage may vary on how difficult that is for the individual. But I don't think it's that big of a deal. But maybe if I was giving it to someone who's 25, who's going to be laid up in the hospital, I might warn them. And if they struggle, I might give them something else, like the Lutheran Book of Prayer or some other devotional. There's tons of stuff. So that's just a very brief word of warning, but they are fantastic. And you can tell this guy was just a really careful pastor on knowing how to preach to people who are suffering, hurt, lonesome. And he points them constantly to God's promises and abiding love. And he really does do it well. One last application, because I know you had thoughts on some of this stuff too about devotionals. One last application before I forget is that in terms of I know the ideal thing is that when a pastor goes out of town, you get a substitute preacher. But I know that there's a lot of places, especially out in more rural, plains, mountain areas out west, that sometimes that can't happen. And believe it or not, sometimes that happens even in the heart of LCMS country in the Midwest. And so you wind up doing an elder service. I know different guys do different things. Sometimes the pastor will write a sermon for the elder to preach. I find that to be difficult for elders to preach that long, or to read a sermon that is that long. I have chosen one of these devotions because it is very straightforward, simple, clear language, and I have kind of amended it to take out any archaicisms and just to smooth out some places where I thought it should be smoothed out. But I took one of these devotions and printed it out. So that is the break open in case of emergency sermon if the elders have to do. It's one thing, if you know you're going out of town, and if your practice is to write a sermon for the elder who's going to read it, okay, fine. But let's say you wake up and you're puking your guts out and you're, on the toilet. I don't think you're writing a sermon at that point. So right. If you need a backup plan, if you don't have one, I would encourage you to maybe take one of these devotions. It is short, it is sweet, it is to the point, and especially if you practice with your elders, or at least a couple of them, it really could be a good break in case of emergency elder service read sermon or devotion.
Yeah. And your last category is history.
Oh, I thought you had stuff on devotions. Am I wrong?
No, I didn't bring any.
Oh, okay. Never mind. No CPH money for you.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, the last one is...
I usually take crosses to my shut-ins, particularly those, who are in nursing homes and things like that. they don't have or hospitals. They just don't have those anymore in hospital rooms. And
maybe in pagan Illinois.
Yeah.
I think about half the hospitals here have crosses in them.
Okay. Well, maybe it's just where I live.
Well, I live in America. I know you don't, but I do.
We're still in the heartland, Ramirez.
I guess so. No, I know what you mean. I'm just joking. Yeah, that's a good idea too. Do you hang them up, or you just give it to them?
I give them. They're small.
Oh,
I mean, something that can be held in their hand.
you should pound. You should be nailing them to the wall.
That would be great, wouldn't it?
Put them on the door. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last section is history. I didn't know if we were going to make it to this or not, but these are some books that I have found super helpful because Americans in general, I'm not accusing every single man, woman, and child, but Americans in general, and this has been a complaint of American educators going back a long, long way. Americans in general are not very rooted in history, or if they are, it only started in, 1776 or 1620 or whenever Virginia was, the colony was founded, Jamestown. What was that, 1608? So Americans in general are not very rooted in history. That is just a proper evaluation of the situation. And when it comes to the history of our church, not just our local parish, and that's wonderful to celebrate anniversaries. We just had 100th anniversary last year, but it's also good to help people understand how we got to where we're at. And that's true for biblical history. It's true for, everyone's always like, oh, what happened between the Testaments? That's why it's great to know a little bit about the Apocrypha. This is also true of Reformation history. And instead of the cheap, easy, and inaccurate version of Reformation history, which it has been far too prevalent, not just in other Lutheran churches, but even in the Missouri Synod, which is basically Luther revolted against Rome. Now we're free in the gospel, and that's what happened. And so you get this kind of caricature of you've got the Bible, and then you've got, you've got Jesus, Paul, Acts, and stuff went bad, and then Luther, which is a dumb way to view history. And it is. It's just dumb. Right. And it's certainly not how Luther viewed it. It's arguable that the Lutherans were the ones who really started serious patristic scholarship. The Catholics are always like, oh, the fathers. And the Eastern Orthodox are like, oh, you have to get into mystery like the fathers. And they don't even use the fathers, right? It was the Lutherans who actually cared about the testimony of the fathers, as evidenced by Flacius's work and Chemnitz's work, and not to mention Luther and Melanchthon. Yeah, and
the catalog of testimonies.
The catalog of testimonies, and then the big history that Flacius wrote too. The centuries, Magdeburg centuries, or whatever they were called. But obviously, you're not going to try to give or teach from humongous volumes or just random quotes, because the people who are giving you those quotes expect you to know the general history. And so when it comes to Reformation history, but locating it in time and connecting it with biblical history and our present day, I can think of no better short book than the book Life of Luther by Gustav Just. Do you know this one?
Yeah, I have it on my shelf. I haven't read it though.
Oh, shame on you. So good.
Correct.
Well, it's really great. And Anchor Books and Tracts, which is the very teeny tiny publishing house of the Lutheran Church of the Reformation, LCR, which was a split off of the Missouri Synod back in the 50s, and that's a long story. But they still reprint these, and that's where I've gotten them from. You can find old copies online, but not enough to actually do a study with 20, 30, 40 people. So I've gotten them from that outfit, Anchor Books and Tracts. And make sure it's not just Anchor, because that takes you to, what is that, a Roman Catholic biblical commentary or something? Anchor commentary. Yeah. Don't go to that. You want to go to Anchor Books and Tracts. Very old school website. So if you see an old school website, you're in the right place. And so it's called Life of Luther. And then the subtitle really explains it. Life of Luther with several introductory and concluding chapters from general church history, which is awesome. The Missouri Synod has put out lots of little books and or tracts of, living with Luther. That's the one with the orange cover from like the 50s. And that one's great. It's got a beautiful map in it and stuff like that. But this one was written back in like, I think it was 1902 or 1898. So some of the language is archaic, and some of the reprints have, printing errors. But I'm telling you what, it is just fantastic. I just want to read some of these opening chapters. So the opening chapter is the Christians of the first century. So it starts you at the New Testament time period, and then it takes you through the persecutions, obviously the persecutions of the church, Constantine and the spreading of Christianity in Germany. And then, so you've got 3 about the early church. I mean, it's quick. It's not exhaustive. You aren't going to become an expert on early church history by reading this, but it's locating the Reformation and what came before and what came after. And it's perfect for like a Sunday morning Bible study. And we actually did this in honor of the 500th anniversary of the Reformation. We walked through this. And then chapter 4 is popery and monkery. So I love the old terms, like papist delusions and all that kind of stuff. I mean, if we get embarrassed about saying that, then we have a problem. So yeah, popery and monkery, kind of the rise of the papacy and the coordinating problems of monasticism and, of course, works righteousness. And then 5 is really neat, the forerunners of the Reformation. So it goes over like John Huss or Wycliffe or however you pronounce his name. Yeah. And Savonarola, who was kind of crazy. So he was a forerunner in some ways, but I mean, he certainly wasn't totally orthodox either. He was kind of crazy. Right. But it really shows, like, it wasn't like there were the Dark Ages. I hate when people call the Middle Ages the Dark Ages, or even when they call them the Middle Ages. Because it's just like, oh, everything was bad. That is just such an Enlightenment, Renaissance attitude towards the age of Christendom. And it's foolish. Yeah. But yeah, so you've got a brief overview of some forerunners. Luther was not the first one to complain about what was going on. I mean, everyone was calling for a reformation. The only question was, what kind of reformation are you going to get? And so everybody knew the Western Roman Church was corrupt, had problems. It was a mess. And I mean, Luther wasn't even the first one to call the Pope the Antichrist. I mean, tons of people were talking about this in the late Middle Ages. So it really shows how Luther was not just a bolt of lightning out of nowhere. I mean, he was a bolt of lightning. I never want to take anything away from the uniqueness and the magnitude of the Reformation or of what God did through Luther and Melanchthon and all the rest. But at the same time, we need to put it in the proper context. And so that's 5 chapters out of 20. So 5 chapters out of 20 are pre-Reformation church history. And then you've got 6 through 18, which are about Luther and the Reformation. Another great thing about this book is that tell me if you think I'm wrong, I think you'll agree with me that most brief accounts of the Reformation really emphasize Luther against Rome, but give kind of short shrift to Luther against the Radical Reformation, the Anabaptists, the Zwinglians, the Reformed, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, is that fair?
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And this book really does do quite a bit of justice to, there were different fronts in the battle. And so, for instance, there's a whole chapter on the fanatics. That's who he calls the radicals, or what we usually call the radicals, and the Peasants' War. There's a whole section on the colloquy of Marburg and Zwingli. So that's kind of neat. In classic fashion, just like lots of other Life of Luther books or Reformation books, there's a section on the Augsburg Confession and the Bible, Catechism and Hymn Book, Luther's family life, all that kind of stuff. So I mean, it follows a general pattern, but it's a little bit more fleshed out, like it hits all the normal beats of a Reformation book, but it's more fleshed out historically and on the Reformed radical front. And then the last two chapters are, chapter 19 is Afflictions of the Lutheran Church in Germany after the Reformation, which is kind of neat. So it gives you a little bit about post-Reformation Lutheranism. It covers the 30 Years' War, too, which is nice. Because, until World War I, that was the big war that Lutherans really thought about, especially Germans thought about, but most Europeans thought about. That was the last big, huge war. Well, I guess the Napoleonic Wars, too. But in terms of Germany being devastated, 30 Years' War was just immense. And we don't think about it. I mean, I bet, again, no offense against the average American or the average person in the pew or the average pastor for that matter, how many people know much about the 30 Years' War? It's just kind of silly that was so determinative for the cradle of Lutheranism and also for so much of our hymnody, especially with Paul Gerhardt. So, so there's that. And then the last chapter is just a chapter on the Lutheran Church in America, just a very, very brief summary. And obviously it's from 125 years ago, so it's not quite up to date, but yeah, it's pretty neat. And that leads me into my next book, unless you wanted to. Okay. So the other book is, so this is the one where I broke my criteria, and it's not available online, and you have to scour the internet to find any copies of it. So it's tough to get. So if you can find it, it's out of copyright, so you can print it and do whatever you want to it. I should probably put the whole thing up online in a PDF, but that would take technological prowess, which I definitely do not have. So if anyone wants a project, maybe they can help me. And it's called...
Is this the Graebner?
Yeah, this is the Theodore Graebner one. Yep. The Story of Our Church in America. And that is about the history of the Missouri Synod. And it's a really neat book. And what's neat about it is that just like that Reformation book, it does not start with the Germans over in Saxony and then just showing up in Perry County. It really does tell the whole story, focusing on the Missouri Synod, obviously, but it tells the story of Lutheranism in America, but again, with the Missouri Synod centered in it. And so the Life of Luther book, the Reformation history book, I went through that with my entire congregation at the 500th anniversary of the Reformation. And I'm actually going through it with my elders right now. We're almost done with it. But the Story of Our Church in America, I went through with my elders, because we always do about a half an hour study at the beginning of our meeting. Sometimes we'll, and so, I mean, almost all of the elders are very active, if not all of them, in Bible study. So I want to kind of give them a little bit more, even though sometimes we do overlap with stuff. But so I'll do stuff like Large Catechism, Augsburg Confession, Brief Statement, or one of these little short historical books. And so we went through this, I think it was a couple years ago. And it was just great. The other really neat thing about this, so again, it doesn't get into all of the nitty gritty. It doesn't really cover the Stephen story. You know what I mean? It just kind of, it's just giving a little summary. But again, if you want a child to know the basics of the Lutheran Church in America, especially with an eye to the Missouri Synod. This is a great little book. If you want to lead an elder study or a Bible study and fill in kind of the blanks and jump off of it, it's a great thing for people to be able to read beforehand and refer back to. One of the greatest things about this book is that it is chock full of maps. Maps of the early settlements of Lutherans in America before the Synod. So there's like a first Swedish settlement, like down in Delaware and near New Jersey and stuff. German settlements in Pennsylvania and New York. Salzburgers down in South Carolina. There's lots of good maps of early Missouri Synod missions. Just beautiful map work. They're all hand drawn, black and white. So our early missions over in India, our missions in China before that all got wrecked by World War II. And then also there's there's a few chapters about just general Lutheran Church in America, but then it gets into the story of the Missouri Synod, talks about the formation, and then it talks about the growth and how we started colleges and schools and all this kind of stuff. And it also shows you the development of the districts, which that's kind of a side point, but especially if pastors are interested in that, it is kind of interesting to see, how the Missouri Synod spread out. And it's got little data on the maps of, where the, what the numbers were, how many souls, how many congregations, how many pastors, where the colleges were. It's neat. So, it's really just about the first 75 years or 100. I can't remember now. I don't have it in front of me. I thought I had it, but it's at home. So I don't have it in front of me. So it doesn't bring you up to the present day, but
it was written in 21. So
yeah. Okay. So not the first 100 years, the first 75.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was written for the upcoming 75th anniversary. That's what it was for.
Okay.
So it's an older resource. Obviously, lots of stuff has changed. Out of all these books, this is the one that's a little maybe off the beaten track, but it's a really neat book if you can find it. But you probably can't anyway, so whatever.
What would you suggest for the Seminex controversy if pastors wanted to put something in a layman's hand and say, this covers it?
Yeah, there was that book of essays that just came out for the 50th anniversary. Uh-huh. I don't remember what that was called. Do you remember the title?
I don't.
There's so much stuff. But there was that book that came out last year. It was a collection of essays. That one really helps. I think that's the most accessible. But I think that if you want a comprehensive, even though it is sometimes a little bit complex, but boy, I would want to put Marquardt's book into people's hands. Marquardt's theological analysis is fantastic.
Is it Rediscovering the Issues? Is that the one?
Yeah, Rediscovering the Issues. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that the one with like Mashke and what's his name? He's in your district. He's in the district office. What's his name? Sherb. Yeah, thank you. I was just grasping for his name. Yeah, that's Sherb and Mashke and several other people. I think Scott Murray had a chapter in there. Maybe I don't even remember.
Yeah, you've got Sherb, Martin Noland, Tim Mashke, Murray, Hartwig, Roy Askins, Cameron McKenzie.
Yeah.
Well, Robbie plus.
Yeah. That I haven't read that one, but everyone says that is a pretty easy read and helpful to people who now, we're 50 years past the event. So, most of the stuff that was written, obviously it's from the perspective of 50 years ago, and they just assume you know things that people today wouldn't. So
Yeah.
I'd give him that. But I mean, Marquardt's book is just fantastic too. Anatomy of an Explosion is
Okay.
is what that's called. Yeah.
Well, very good. Thanks for all these resources. Some obviously I knew about, but others I did not. I didn't know
Really?
about the Derfler. I didn't know about the Derfler stuff.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's great, man. I can honestly say that I've probably passed out a few dozen of those books. Like we will order them, and I've always got about 10 in the church, working, like workroom, where we've got materials. And if somebody is going to be at home for a few weeks after surgery, or if somebody is a shut-in and is able to read, I mean, you kind of got to play it by ear, but yeah, those are great. Sometimes I will take them along to someone that I'm visiting in the hospital. And I don't give it to them because they are either incapacitated or they, I know they're going to be out, you know what I mean? Soon. So, but it's kind of nice. I mean, I do the common practice of, if I'm bringing communion or if I'm not bringing communion, even, having devotion with the person. And sometimes I'll preach the sermon that's coming up. Sometimes I'll tailor it to a specific verse that I think they need to hear. But other times I'll just bring it along. And if they really like it, I'll be like, do you want me to leave this with you? And, if people aren't going to use it, or they're only going to use it for a week, I'll ask them to give it back to church. You know what I mean? Especially before CPH started doing the print on demand, I would always ask for them back. After someone passed away or someone finally made it back to regular life. But now that they're more available, I'll leave them with people, and yeah, they're great. They're really nice. I know a couple of families that do use them for family devotions because they like them so much. But
yeah.
Well,
thanks for your time and walking us through these resources. And I will provide links for all these in the show notes.
Oh, okay, great, awesome.
Or at least the ones available.
Which is pretty much all of them except that last one. So.
Yeah, excellent.
Well, sounds good.